last woman.
Wow.
And the last man standing win immunity.
It probably says something about me as a person that I see this overwhelmingly innocent decision production is making to improve the equity of the game and immediately start wondering, does Jeff have an ulterior motive here? Individual immunities are a pretty big deal on Survivor. If you have individual immunity, you can't be voted out. If you can't be voted out, you can't lose. Some would argue winning immunity is a very good thing indeed. Eric may disagree, but hey, no one bats 1,000. Traditionally, only one person wins individual immunity per round. That's kind of why it's called individual immunity, but occasionally Survivor will give out 2 immunity necklaces as a way to spice up the game. One such flavor of spice is giving the necklace to one man and one woman. This has happened 11 times over the 49 seasons of the show, so today we'll go through each of these instances and see if we can figure out a pattern as to why they've done this. We'll look at the challenges used, historical data regarding these challenges, and which castaways would have won if they weren't handing out necklaces like they were fire tokens. Some caveats to quickly clarify, I am only talking about post-merge individual immunity challenges, where 2 necklaces were up for grabs and they were awarded to one man and one woman. No pre-merge challenges like in Heroes vs Villains, no post-merge split tribals like in Survivor 48, or the rest of the new era, no Owen and Carla outlasting the Tides in Survivor 43. Furthermore, when I talk about who would have won the challenge, it is purely speculative because oftentimes people just stop competing after they win immunity, so I'm making some assumptions here. Let's get into it. The very first time they did an immunity challenge where a man and a woman won immunity was Survivor All-Stars, with the challenge being to hold your breath and then the finalists do a relay race. Right off the bat, this one is a bit weird. First of all, this challenge had never been done before and hasn't been done since. The wiki claims it's based on the first merge challenge in Borneo, which was to hold your breath as long as possible. That was won by Greg, so you could theoretically claim that men had an advantage here, but it certainly doesn't seem major. It's not like they do equalizers for any other swimming challenge, like this one in Panama. If I were a conspiracy theorist, I would say that production wanted a chance for both Lex and Kathy to be immune, but in the wrap-up, I'll explain why I don't put too much credit on that theory. After one challenge, I will say, I am perplexed why they did the split. We then took an 11-season hiatus until Survivor Samoa with the challenge Nutcracker. Just like with the challenge in All-Stars, it hadn't appeared before this moment and hasn't appeared since this moment. This challenge is just baseball.
Baseball your sport?
No, making love's my sport.
You play a lot?
Not often enough.
And it's not like score a home run baseball. Physical strength isn't really a requirement here, it's all about technique. Maybe they split the sexes here because the men are more likely to have played baseball before? But then in token scenes, they didn't split the throwing at tiles underarm challenge, even though Coates had lots of experience in that.
We're throwing underhand breaking tiles. None of us have ever done this in our lives.
I have.
This trend continues to perplex me. I didn't comment on the All-Stars challenge because they were competing in entirely separate divisions, but this challenge would have been won by John if it hadn't been split by sex. We'll keep an eye on that for the rest of the video. Survivor Nicaragua is an interesting case, where they split the challenge Push Me, Pull You, and it was won by Fabio and Jane. This is the first time they ever ran this challenge, so maybe they expected it to be a bigger gap in the performance of the sexes than it was? I think it's safe to say Jane would have won this challenge if they kept going. She was a beast here. This is the first case where the split immunity actually ended up helping a man instead. They've only run this challenge one other time, and it was won by Adam, but we really don't have enough of a sampling to say anything about it. We then get Survivor South Pacific with Coconut Cradle, again the first time they were doing this challenge, so very little to go on. Also, the last time they did this challenge. Does Survivor just use these split immunities to test challenges they don't really like? It certainly is a test of forearm strength, but enough to need to split? Not entirely convinced. Aussie would have won this challenge if they chose not to split it, but it is Aussie. The conspiracy theorist in me wants to say this was to increase the chances of Aussie winning immunity, but again, surely Aussie of all people doesn't actually need the help. Maybe they wanted to increase the chances of a correct idol play. I do wish they'd run this challenge again so we could figure out if they needed this split or not. I swear this topic becomes interesting soon, but now we get Survivor Philippines with Wrist Assured. This is the only challenge that will appear multiple times in this video, so I'll cover it more in depth soon. This was also the very first time they'd done it, and finally, it actually makes intuitive sense for the split to occur. It only took them 3 tries for it to happen. In this challenge, you're holding up a percentage of your starting body weight. While you may think it being the same percentage for everyone would make this fair, I do kinda see why they chose to split it. Men and women lose body fat at different rates and have different levels of muscle. So even though it sounds like holding up some percentage makes it equal, it doesn't take into account all factors. They also had no data to go off in this instance, so better safe than sorry. And considering Carter likely would have won the solo variant, seems like they made a smart move. We can ignore them doing a similar challenge in Survivor Panama and not splitting it, but hey, nobody's perfect. Maybe this is even them learning from their mistakes. I'm sure some people have been waiting for me to point out the extremely obvious elephant in the room that I've neglected. All of these instances took place at the Merds. Survivor has simply done this as a way to shake up the Merds, and have a few more people immune at the biggest tribal council of the season. This makes sense, and if they only ever did it at the Merds, I probably wouldn't be making this video. But now we get to the first season where this isn't the case. Survivor Worlds Apart, and it's wrist assured again. This one happened at the final 8, meaning a quarter of the castaways were immune at tribal council. It coincidentally also happened when Mike desperately needed to win immunity to stay alive in the game. Now looking at the history, Rest Assured had been run solo once at this point in time, and was won by Monica, who was a neat lady. So maybe it's Survivor trying to even things out? Or maybe it's the case of insane conspiracy theory? Again, we'll cover the conspiracy theory part at the end of the video, but Mike did last the longest, so the split probably wasn't that big of a deal here. Could Carolyn have maybe beaten him? Sure, but she didn't need to, meaning we'll never actually know. We now get to Cambodia, once again at the final 8, with the challenge overextended. At this point the challenge had only been run twice, and had been won evenly by men and women, although Christine's win was against another woman, so maybe that's entirely disingenuous of me to say. Either way, production deciding to split here doesn't really make sense. Are women significantly worse at looking up than men? Did they desperately want to increase the chance of Joe winning a 5th immunity challenge? I could see Jeff salivating at that. Either way, it doesn't matter, because Keith lasted the longest. I planned on making a fun comment about the future iterations of this challenge, but for some unknown reason, the wiki list overextended as the same challenge as Audio Slave, and it always messes with my research. These are not the same challenge, these are distinct challenges. I will die on this hill. Hashtag change the challenge, Survivor Wiki. We then get to Island of the Idols, who again, did not do the immunity split at the Merds, they did it one round after the Merds. As a psyop to make us forget about Kelly? Now here's a Survivor Wiki challenge grouping I don't hate as much. There's 2 versions of this challenge, one where you're leaning forward and one where you're leaning backwards. See, these are basically the same challenge. The wiki does not need to change this challenge page. I'm sure someone who's much better at physiology than me can explain why these actually aren't the same challenge, and hey, you know what? Go ahead, I'd love to learn, and subscribe while you're down there. Either way, aside from Aaron in this version of the challenge, every single instance of this challenge has been won by a woman. This one seemingly is a challenge that favors women more than men, possibly because they weigh less on average? So Survivor decided to give out 2 necklaces to even that out. This is the sort of thing I expected to see more often. Production splitting challenges that obviously favored one sex over the other. So I'm surprised it took us 8 instances for it to actually happen. Now we've got winners at war with Get a Grip. We are back to it just being a fun way to spice up the Merds, but also completely baffle my mind. Get a Grip is famously one of the most evenly spread challenges. At this point in time, it had been won by 5 men and 3 women, except 2 of those men were the same man, because Ozzy is a person that exists. And now it's been won by 7 men and 7 women, so clearly a challenge that doesn't discriminate. Although if we just go off who lasted the longest, Jeremy would have won this challenge here, which would have made it 7 men versus 6 women winners. Again, not really worth splitting. We went from something making perfect sense to something making 0 sense to me. We then took another long break before entering the new era with Survivor 47. And god damn it, it's wrist assured again! But now, producers actually had data to go off when making this decision. It had been won by 4 men and 3 women. But if you only count non-split performances, then it's 2 men and 1 woman. Is that enough to justify splitting it 3 times? Hard to say. This one would have likely been won by Kyle, but again we don't actually have proof of this. Last we have our most recent split, Survivor 49 with Legs 11. It was again the first time Survivor had done this challenge, because we're only focusing on US Survivor for this video. It's easy to say that Savannah clears this challenge with ease, although maybe the real secret is having the letter S at the start of your name. This is now only the 3rd challenge of 10 where a woman would have won, and only the 2nd where I think women have a distinct advantage. I can't put into words why, it just makes intuitive sense to me. So what have we learned? Of the 11 times Survivor has split individual immunities by sex, 5 of them, it was their very first time running the challenge, so they likely weren't sure how it would be different between men and women. Arguably, you could bump that number up to 6 of 11 if you include All-Stars. Of the 10 challenges where we can make a decent estimate at who would have won, men probably would have won 7 of them, if only one necklace were up for grabs. So it's possible to say that this is mainly done to give women a more equal shot in some of these challenges. However, this is kind of happenstance as it were, because oftentimes the women who win these challenges just choose to drop once they've won. So it's entirely possible Denise beats Carter or Carolyn beats Mike. We can't actually know for sure. Of these 11 challenges, I'd say 5 of them were definitely strength based. Those being Pull Me, Push You, Coconut Cradle, and the 3 Wrist Assureds. You could argue that Splashback and Get a Grip are also strength based. Doesn't really fit my definition. This does sort of beg the question, why do they not give out 2 necklaces more often? And why do they do it at all? It's clear they're happy for most challenges to inherently favor one body type, as that's just the nature of the game. So why these particular challenges? I cannot see what it is about them that makes them so special in the eyes of production. Even Wrist Assured, they don't do it for all strength challenges, so what gives? Now about the conspiracy theory that Survivor just does this to increase their favourites' chance of winning immunity. Lex, Ozzy, Mike, Joe, Savannah. It's a pretty compelling case, and I am tempted to believe it. However, Survivor is also a game show, and Jeff is adamant that they plan things out firmly ahead of time. He even said so during this season.
Let me give you a little insight into the game design of Survivor 49. A tribe switch is on the board at 14 players. We just got here a little earlier due to Jake's unfortunate evacuation, but we're at 14 players. We're switching tribes.
So while it would be easy for them to just pull out a second necklace at any challenge, is it likely? I'll let you be the judge. And that is a brief rundown of Survivor splitting immunities by sex. What do you think? Is it fair for them to do this? Do you like it? Let me know. Until next time, I've been Henry Hickman Survivor, and let me tell you, my subscribers certainly are not split by sex. It's like 86% men according to YouTube analytics. But I love them all anyway.